Good evening. Welcome to the May 3rd Village Board regular meeting. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Bazemore?
Present.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee Levin?
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Thank you. Do we have any mayors and trustees announcements?
Sure. I will just let folks know that gap in the attendance for this evening. Trustee Quesada, he's attending a meeting at Park School with a number of Hispanic parents discussing issues related to building codes, and I know that that is also where Paul Rioli is right now as well, and they may either or both of them be joining us shortly during the course of the meeting, and we thank them for trying to be in two places at once, and we welcome them back when they are able to come back up Spring Street. I do have a few items to let folks know about. One of them is we've talked a lot about housing in recent months. We've focused a lot on our updating of our code to be able to have more effective code enforcement and strengthen our code enforcement tools that our building department has. And that is one piece of addressing the needs that we have for housing in our community. There are a number of other pieces of the housing puzzle that we are actively working on, and folks who have been aware of Kevin Dworka and his work will know that we are right now having developed an analysis of our housing needs and capacity. There have been some community meetings, listening sessions, and then most recently there was a workshop that took place at the community center to hear about people's concerns and experience with housing in Ossining, and we look forward to having that report, which will include pros and cons to a variety of different pathways that we can take to better address housing going forward in Ossining, and that report should initially be with us in May and then finalized in June. As part of this comprehensive effort to addressing housing needs in our community, we are always looking to strengthen our relationships and our understanding of opportunities from organizations at a higher level of government, particularly New York State. And in that vein, I was pleased to be invited to participate in a roundtable conversation this Monday. I attended at the invitation of IFCA Executive Director Karen DeTore. She and I had an opportunity to meet a number of folks at the forefront of opportunities with grants and investment in economic development as well as housing through HCR, which the Housing Commission Renewal?
Housing Community Renewal.
Housing Community Renewal, thank you. And it's the commissioner, who's a new commissioner that we were able to meet on Monday. Her name is Ruth Ann Visnakis. Probably totally mispronounced that. It was really a great opportunity, and I was pleased to get to meet a lot of the important people that we may be able to partner with going forward to take advantage of bringing some grant money into our community to do better work here, as we are always striving to do. Coming up this week, next week, but it'll be after our next meeting, right before our next meeting, so I'll let you know now, is Senior Law Day, and that is happening next Wednesday, May 10th, at the Ossining Public Library. From 9 to 10 will be a continental breakfast. Come on over and enjoy a donut or a pastry or coffee. And then from 10 a.m. until 12:15, there are going to be 2 workshops taking place on topics that are relevant to seniors, perhaps in our community. If you're a snowbird and you have dual residences, there are some considerations, legal considerations on that front, and there can be some advice provided for you at one of these workshops. And the other workshop is related to advanced planning for healthcare, and so I encourage you to join us at the Ossining Public Library next Wednesday, May 10th, for Senior Law Day. And the following week, on Thursday, May 18th at 6:30 p.m., putting on my documentary and discussion series hat, I invite you to this month's documentary and discussion screening series offering, which is a film about sexual violence on college campuses. Not a light subject. We have an excellent team with us for the panel. The name of the film is The Hunting Ground, and we encourage you to please join us. The film starts promptly at 6:30. in the beautiful Boudars Theater. And as always, the program is free and open to the public. We'll watch the film and then have a really great discussion with all the folks who join us for that. Colleagues on the board, what else is going on?
I want to remind everybody about some live music here in Ossining as part of the Second Saturday Jazz Series on Saturday, May 13th at 7:30. The Paul Connors Organ Trio will be playing. It's $10 at the door. All the money goes to the band, and the Elks Lodge is the location. And there's drinks and bar food if you're interested. This has been a great series since I started it in January. It's great to have regular live music here in the village, and all those that have attended, I think, have really enjoyed it. This particular trio, the drummer is a local guy, John Doty, and he introduced me to Paul, and I'm excited to have him at the Elks Lodge on Saturday, May 13th at 7:30. Thanks.
Just an announcement. This is May. If you are traveling in our downtown, you may see ribbons around the light post. That means it is Mental Illness Awareness Month. Also, speaking of our downtown, yesterday we had our first meeting with our downtown working redevelopment committee. It's a fabulous group of people, and we started to talk about the parameters of the group, and you should see a public presentation on May 10th.
At our work session.
At our work session.
Yeah, thank you. Rika, do you want to join in?
Sure. Just a reminder that this Saturday is the start of Stash the Trash. The kickoff event is at the Richard Wishney Park, which is Pleasantville Road and Orchard Road, basically known as the park with the fountain in the middle. And it's a great park, and we're kicking off a bunch of community events about cleanup 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. A bunch of us are going down to help clean the park. Please join us. It's just a great, fun thing to do. We also recently installed a feeder, thanks to Parks and Recs, and we're working on the pier there and the track. It's just going to be a lot of fun, so please come out. For the high school kids, I guess some middle school kids, you can get community credits for being out there, so please come on out.
We'll move on to administrative reports. Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Thank you, Mary Ann. Just a couple of announcements. We do have two resolutions on tonight. The first is the DPW bid award materials, supplies, and services for May 1st, 2017 to April 30, 2019. Paul Fraioli discussed that at length at last week's work session, and basically deals with the various bids that have been received for numerous services that are used throughout the village, and we now do it on a 2-year basis rather than on the annual basis. The second resolution we have is more in the sense of anti-discrimination, police practice, village practices. It's important to note that this resolution restates and reaffirms the village's positions and how the village has acted through all of its departments in these circumstances. And it's important that for those who will hear the resolution read tonight and read the resolution, understand that from the village's perspective, this is nothing new. This is how the village has acted for a long time. It is how our police department acts. It is how all of our departments act and will continue to act in these circumstances for these people, for anybody. And as you'll see from the opening paragraph, it basically applies across the board. And it's just important to know that. This is a resolution which is adopted in some part from other resolutions seen throughout the state of New York, as well as in other locales in the United States. And again, reaffirms, does not change policy, does not add to policy, but is a reaffirmation of what our policies are in this village. Just a few other things. We've spoken at length over the past couple of months about the revisions to the code, specifically with regard to code enforcement. We do have, as a result of that new ordinance that the board has passed, a code board of appeals. We have so far 3 individuals who have indicated an interest to be members. It is a 5-person board. We urge anyone who is interested in membership in that and other boards to go to the village's homepage and to indicate their interest. We would like to get the Code Board of Appeals up and running when the statute goes into effect, which will probably be within the next 2 to 3 weeks, depending when we get the word from Albany. So we would certainly ask that whoever is interested, please get that interest out. It is an appointment by the village manager. So if you can get your information that you're interested in that or in any other boards that we have, please do so. A couple of other things. With regard to the local law, we talk about operating permits. If you go now onto the building department site on the village's website, you will see an explanation of what the operating permits are. We're in the process of having one sole location where all forms will be located so that anyone can go to that and find all the different building department forms, planning forms that we will need. And that will also include, folks, what we call our rapid entry law, which is actually something that's been on the books since 2009. But if you are a particular property owner who is required to have what we call commonly a Knox box, you need to get that application. It's an application you fill out, you send out to the company for the Knox box, they send it back to you. It's important because it provides key access to parts of the building that otherwise your firefighters cannot get access to. So if you are a building that requires to have it, we urge you to get one. And if you are questioning as to whether your building is covered, just check the statute or call the building department. One other point, folks. Recently, we've had a couple of circumstances where folks have been doing construction without permits. I must urge you that if you have any question as to whether you need a permit to do construction, please call the building department. Because the one thing we don't want to have to do, and the building department does not want to have to do, is to issue a citation after you have done your work. We have a couple of circumstances where that is in fact the case now. So please just call the building department. They will tell you if you need a permit for the type of work that you are doing. It will save everyone a lot of grief as we go on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. I'm going to address Resolution E. I'm going to shoot from the hip a little bit on this one because as much as I can try and prepare something, I think that this is something that requires a great deal of honesty, a great deal of candor, and I think I've struggled to find a way for people to really understand what it is that we do, what we're seeking to share with people here, and for people to understand. The mission of the Ossining Police Department says a lot of different things about what we do, but in general, what it says is that we're here to protect people. It doesn't say who we're here to protect, it just says people. That includes all people. If there's anybody in this community that needs help, we're here to help them. If you've been the victim of a crime, we want you to be able to come to us. We have a particular problem with parents who tell their children that be good or that police officer's going to take you away, because we really don't want kids growing up that way. We're the people that we want people running to in a time of crisis. With some of the stuff that's been going on in other areas and some of the anxiety that we've heard from members of our community here, I understand that the board is anxious to share a message with the public on behalf of the police department and with the police department to let people know where we stand on things. We've had a lot of conversation about this. We've gone over this thoroughly. I've been a part of every conversation that we've had, and I'm proud to say that this board has been extremely open to listening to the police department, to understanding how we do things, to respecting our practices, and I like to believe that we listen to them just as much because you know, they share a different perspective for what members of the community are looking for. So I say all that to get to the point that what's included in this resolution is not something new. It's not a position that we're taking tonight. I believe this is simply sharing a statement as to who our police department is and what our responsibility to the community is. It has nothing to do with people of any particular race or ethnicity, although we can all certainly understand that there are certain people in the Hispanic community that have a great deal of anxiety at this particular moment. If there's anybody that feels threatened at some point, has been the victim of a crime, or in general needs the help of the police department, we want them to come here. When it comes to immigration issues, We're not changing anything we've ever done, and that goes back 2, 3, and 4 administrations. It's not the job of the Ossining Police Department to walk down the street and ask people how they got in this country. We've never done that, and for the foreseeable future, we never will. If you've been the victim of a crime, our questions will tend to be about what happened to you and how we can make things better and what we can do to make you whole again. This is not a statement, at least from the police department, in support of or against any particular administration or particular policy, other than that our police department stands for keeping people safe, for helping people, and protecting this community. So I hope that people can understand that's where this comes from. I personally stand behind this because of what we're doing here. And I will say that if anybody has questions or has concerns about what it is that we're doing, we're here to talk. We've gone to a number of community events and spoke to different groups about our particular practices, none of which are included in this resolution. This only speaks to policy, not practice itself. And we're glad to keep the conversation going. This is a good opportunity to open that door and to let people speak about what concerns them and what they're worried about, whether this you feel directly affects you or not. So I thank you for listening to the police department for all the days that you have, and will continue to. And thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to organizational announcements. If there's anyone with an organizational announcement,
Please
to
come up,
the
Ms. Cabillos.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Cubillos. I work at the
Need to lower the microphone. So
Oh my God. I should know better. My name is Carrie Cubillos from the Austin Public Library. I worked 20 years for this community. Obviously, my first language is Spanish. I look after my community. And I want to ask about this resolution. Thank you so much. I just got it right on time to listen.
You know what? Carrie, I hate to interrupt you. Can I just pause for one moment, because it sounds like you were commenting on a resolution, which you are absolutely able to do, but just hold off one moment, because right now we're seeing if people have organizational announcements, and I just want to double check, does anyone in the room have organizational announcements, like you have an event coming up, you have an organizational program that you want the public to know about?
This is just a quick question, but I can wait.
No, that's okay, because if you want to comment or ask about the resolution, I want you to have that opportunity. Okay, and she actually gets 4 minutes for that. Is there anything else in between there, Madam Clerk, or can we jump right to the
No,
comments
ma'am,
on
we can go
resolutions?
right to the village
All right.
board resolutions.
Nope, Carrie, go right back. Now you get a full 4 minutes. Ask away, comment away.
Okay. My question is this. This resolution is in English, obviously. My question is if this resolution could be translated into Spanish, which I volunteer for, but I don't know the procedure. I don't know how we do this. It has to be signed in order to be valid. So that's my question.
Well, as far as the validity, but I will point out that item 8 on the therefore be it resolved states the Village of Ossining will disseminate and publicize this resolution throughout the village, including translating this resolution to Spanish and providing it to the Hispanic community. So we are in line with your thinking, and Corporation Counsel, do you want to comment on the process for translation?
Once we have the certified copy of the resolution, after assuming the board provides it, I'll be more than happy to get it over, and we'll get it all translated, and it will be disseminated throughout the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cabillos.
Is there anyone else who's come to address the resolution on the board this evening?
Good evening. My name is Luisa Granda, and I am here representing Neighbors Link. Over the past 16 years, our community center has been able to, our mission has been to strengthen the whole community through the healthy integration of immigrants. We achieve our mission by offering programs, offering long-term residents, volunteer opportunities, and through our strong partnerships. Over the past 2 years, Neighbors Link has been working with local residents here in Ossining and nonprofit stakeholders to bring Neighbors Link here. We've been providing parent education, leadership, and workforce development programs. And soon as we find some space, we will have additional offerings. So NeighborsLink is dedicated to supporting the entire community, and we are thrilled to be here. We're specifically here tonight in support of the resolution. We really and truly applaud the efforts to ensure that all residents feel safe and secure and welcome. We see this resolution as an opportunity to reinforce the trust that already exists in the community with law enforcement. Mayor, trustees, chief, just know that NeighborsLink is behind you 100%, and we would like to continue the conversation and really work hard together to maintain what Ossining has currently and how we can continue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, how are you? My name is Audrey Galfand, and I am the coordinator of the chapter of Briarcliff Ossining Indivisible. And so I wanted to come tonight to thank the police department, the mayor, and the village trustees for putting forth this resolution protecting the rights of those who live, work, and travel in our community. Your commitment to this exemplifies why we are a model community in Westchester County. By adopting this resolution, we show the country that we stand behind protecting the rights of those who live here, regardless of their legal status. And I'm proud to be part of a community of inclusion. And the members of our group, Briarcliff Ossining Indivisible, are in full support of this resolution. And so I really wanted to thank you for your hard work in coming to this, because although it may be something that we do, putting it together in a resolution is not easy. And I hope Ossining continues to shine as a leader in integration and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Marilyn Entwistle. I'm here as a Ossining resident, but also I am part of the Croton Indivisible group. And I wanted to basically say the same thing that Audrey just said, so I will not repeat it. Very similar. Thank you so much for putting forth the resolution. I understand that it's something that's been policy all along, but I think it's really important to reassure people and let people know that we are a community that is not going to be going after people. People are feeling very fearful and very vulnerable right now. So I really very much appreciate that as an Ossining resident, but also as a member of Indivisible. One question I did just want to pose to you, Mr. Sylvester, my question is, how does the police department handle the whole issue of IDs? Many illegal, undocumented people don't have driver's licenses. That's something we're actually working on with the county right now. But how is the ID situation handled when you stop someone and have to ask them questions, et cetera?
That's sort of a broad concept, and I may need you to narrow that a little bit to really understand what you're asking.
Okay, so
people present all different forms of ID.
That's what
everything from an identification that's been purchased in a local store, which we encourage people not to do.
Right.
Because, quite frankly, we see that as a scam. They're
Right.
being sold things that oftentimes have the word official on them, or they'll say that it's an international driver's license, which doesn't necessarily exist in the format that they're being
Sure.
literally sold.
Right.
Many people in our community, if they don't have a state-issued driver's license or identification card, will carry a passport or something else. In many cases, we make do.
Okay. So those are acceptable forms of ID.
Depends on for what purpose. So I
Right.
mean, a passport is always acceptable. I mean, that is
Right.
sort of the universal identification around the globe. But I think for other purposes, it depends why we're dealing with you as to what's considered a valid identification. And it's not necessarily the document that's important. It's being able to confirm that you are, in fact, who you say you are.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. The only other, one of the reasons I brought it up was because we just learned today that there were 80 Westchester County residents detained by ICE, 52 of whom were detained simply because they didn't have proper identification. So it was just a point of interest to me to know how that's handled, how we handle it here in Ossining. Okay.
That doesn't, I can't speak to what you're discussing because I wasn't there and I don't know the specifics of it, but We've never, to my knowledge, had the experience of any agency just walking down the street and asking people for identification. I've had several contacts with immigration this week, and they reaffirmed exactly what we've been talking about all along, that they come here periodically, and when they do, it's ordinarily for one person at a time. It's a very specific person, and that's the only purpose we've known them to come here for. As far as identification, we don't ever walk down the street and just at random ask people for ID either.
No, I'm
So
sure
I
you don't.
don't really know how
I'm
that
sure
would
you
even
don't.
play out.
Right.
I-
But I was wondering if we had any experience in this community of ICE coming and looking for people.
I can tell you that in my experience, I have seen a situation where a person has been arrested for independent local charges, and because of a lack of identification, they may be fingerprinted more quickly or at a sooner date than maybe otherwise, and that may reveal a warrant from ICE, and in that case, it may expedite their contact with immigration, but it's not simply for a lack of identification. The person in that case would be fingerprinted sometimes that day, sometimes at their court date. It really, really depends on the specifics of the case. And if they had identification, that information may have been placed in a computer just the same as everybody else, and those warrants do pop just the same. So, you know, I think the issue of whether you have identification doesn't necessarily cause a contact with immigration. It may make it happen sooner, but it's not usually for not having ID.
Okay.
That's not against the law.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your
Madam Mayor,
comments.
might I make a comment?
Please.
Marilyn? In the event that someone comes in non-speaking and they don't have identification for a marriage license, we do require a valid passport. If they don't have a driver's license, we also request a certified copy of their birth certificate translated into English.
Thank you.
And that-
Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk.
Is there anyone else who's come to address the board on this?
Or any resolution if you'd like to talk about the material supplies and services for the bid award.
Very exciting.
No, I'd like to speak on the
Yeah,
resolution.
surely somebody would want to talk about that, no?
No.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Lorton.
evening. My name is David Lortan. I'm a resident here of Ossining. I'm also a member of the Help Committee at St. Anne's Parish and have been a member for 20 years. We look to help folks. Originally, it started when folks were cheated of their wages. So we've tried, with the help of pro bono lawyers, to get some of those wages back, and we have been successful over the years. I think more recently, we have found that folks who have traffic tickets, not necessarily from Ossining, but traffic tickets that they've picked up along the way for one reason or another, and they've come to us to say help, because they're scared that that information about a traffic ticket that they have or a traffic violation is not only going to go to the DMV, but that it'll go directly to Washington. The people who come from Ecuador know of a national police force. They do not know of local police forces. So that's kind of the background that a lot of our folks come from. I applaud this resolution tonight. We applaud it, principally because there's a heck of a lot of fear in the community. People are scared. People are not leaving their homes. People are coming to us, as I said, for traffic violations. They're coming to us for other things that have never happened before. And they're just want to make sure, quote, their record is clear and that this information is not going to be shared on a national level. So I applaud the resolution. We are strongly behind it. But as Kerry was saying, one of the things that I'm concerned about is we may get the resolution translated. A lot of folks who are here have second-grade educations or just have tremendous difficulty in reading the language. So I just help at trying to think of other creative ways that this information can get out to the community. And I know the police department has gone to St. Anne's, and we appreciate that. Help. We need help to make sure that that information gets out there so that we can improve communication with the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, please.
You know, sir, I'm sorry. I don't know if, but I think you have the equipment. You know, the second grade education issue could be resolved if you had somebody read it in Spanish and frankly any other language on video, because if somebody can't read, they certainly, you did it word for word. I'd have issues if people started translating, but you know, if we put on a video on your face, share it as a video, that might help with your second grade education.
Sure.
And perhaps if we do have the opportunity to put it in some sort of video, it could be put out on the Ossining Hispanic Padres
Wherever,
Padres
but
Hispanos
certainly for your
Facebook
use.
page would be
that
a
would
That
logical
would
way
be
to reach
great.
a lot of people.
Yes.
And actually, you know what is interesting? The reason why I was late because I was in another meeting with this particular group about something else that is related to the issues that they're having here as well. So I will share that sentiment with some of the group members in that, and we can, the video part, I like that idea a lot. I was thinking of probably doing something different, but that actually will work. So yes, I will definitely do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief,
That was all in 4 minutes.
Chief, could you speak to the is traffic tickets and coming to court and DMV, is that something that people should worry about as far as triggering ICE or?
So, I could get carried away on this topic, but you know, here's the thing: there are so many variables with all these things. It's really difficult to nail down and give somebody a specific strategy on what they should be doing, and that isn't necessarily the purview of the police department to do. But I will share this: my advice to anyone who's looking to have less police contact would be to, for any person, would be to immediately deal with your tickets. I'm not suggesting you pay them. You may plead not guilty and go to court, as is your right as a human being to come here and do that. But by ignoring your tickets, they will not go away. That is one thing I can assure you of. And one of the terrible things that happens to people that don't pay or deal with their tickets is they then end up with their privilege to drive suspended, whether or not you have a driver's license. So if you're a person that doesn't have a driver's license and you get a ticket and you then don't answer it, you then become a suspended unlicensed driver, which is a misdemeanor, and that would be an arrestable offense for which you may end up with a contact from another agency. You may end up fingerprinted on certain offenses. So those are concerns. So if I were to give anybody advice on what to do with a ticket, it would be to don't throw them in the garbage because they're not going away. As far as what the Department of Motor Vehicles does when you get tickets, I'm unsure what their policy is as far as sharing, and we don't have any control over that. You know, some of the things that I'm hearing people say, and you know, about not talking to other agencies, nothing that we're doing prevents immigration from finding out about things that people do. This isn't a blockade from federal agencies. It simply says that for purposes of local law enforcement, we're not going out seeking people just for that purpose. We do come across people from time to time, and it is it does happen on occasion where we come across somebody who has an arrest here and that then pops that they've got a warrant for some other agency, and whether it's immigration or it's the next jurisdiction over, these things do occur, and that will continue to occur, and we don't have any control over that. But what we will not do is walk down the street and ask people just for sport how they came to the country. So to answer your question about the tickets and stuff like that, I don't know what DMV does with that information. Ordinarily, traffic tickets are not treated as a major deal, although they can become a big deal if not addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments?
Anyone else?
Please, welcome.
So I'm Algina Kennedy. I'm also a parishioner at St. Anne's, and I'm very grateful for this because there is a tremendous amount of fear. And I think that's probably the biggest problem, people's imagination about what can happen and any story out there, you know. So I'm very grateful. My one question concerning number 4 and 5 is about if there's an investigation of potential illegal activity, what, I guess, protections are there for witnesses and crime victims who may be illegal and may be very reluctant to give any kind of testimony or be involved or even call the police, say, in a domestic violence incident, if, well, they're going to come in contact with the police in this climate?
So this resolution isn't going to cover every permutation of what we do in police, and it's not meant to be a procedural manual either. We have a lengthy procedural manual that covers specific instances of how to handle different things. In general, crime victims, and I say in general because I can't think off the top of my head of where an exception would be, but we don't ask crime victims. We're there to talk to them about why they've come to us. And I don't think, I've said to the board, and sometimes we disagree on this one a little bit, this resolution is not going to solve all our problems. What it's going to take, and we've done this with some of the organizations, and I know that some of the trustees are just coming back from things with organizations, we have to get out and actually speak to people. We'll come to St. Anne's, and we'll speak Spanish, and we'll speak English, and we'll go to Park School, and we'll do these things, and that's how we're going to share with people that it is okay. Saying it once isn't going to do the job. Putting it in writing helps. Saying it helps. Doing those together is good. Saying it again and going again, and people have to, trust doesn't happen in the instant. It's something that has to be built over time. So you're going to see our department out getting involved in different things. And I did miss in my announcements earlier that we have a number of community outreach programs where you can do that. For instance, kickball with cops and softball with cops and coffee with a cop and anything else you want to do with a cop. We're going to do this summer. That's where these things are.
With a cop.
So
What's that?
building
Anything you
trust.
want to do.
Anything you want to do with a cop. Almost. Easy.
So by building trust.
So by
in the
building
community.
trust, and trust can't happen in one day. It's going to take repeated efforts, and it's going to take all 61 people in the department behind this. But we don't, it's not a conversation we have. We absolutely get into conversations with people about where they come from because cultural competency is really important to us. So things like that may come up, but we're not reporting domestic violence victims to immigration. That's not how this goes.
And how about witnesses?
They're all treated the same. If you're coming here to help us with a crime, we're certainly not going to try and get rid of you before you can testify in the case. It would be counterproductive.
Thank you.
Or after, for that matter. But again, I have to reiterate that we don't have control over, you're generally not put into any kind of database or run through a system as the victim or as a witness. But if for some other reason you've done something that gets the attention of federal authorities, we can't stop them from coming here. We're just not calling them up and saying, hey, I've got this crime victim, should we check him out for you? It's not how it goes. Every defendant that comes through here is always checked for warrants. That's standard procedure everywhere in the country.
But that's a defendant.
That's a defendant.
That's different
And
than somebody who was a victim or who was a witness.
Right.
to crime
I'm
that
just
is-
distinguishing that defendants are always going to be checked for everything, and that's just something that has to be done. Victims are treated very differently than that. So we're going to keep telling people that if something bad happens to you, come to us. We're here to help.
Is there anyone else? Not seeing anyone, we'll move on to our adoption of resolutions. Resolve the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the April 19th, 2017 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolve the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the April 26th, 2017 special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated May 17th, 2017, the amount of $813,522.48. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the New York State law provides for municipalities to advertise and award bids for certain materials, supplies, and services as specified therein through the use of an annual bid process which allows for the purchase of such items at a fixed cost to the municipality. And whereas the Village of Ossining has in place a procurement policy which provides for purchase and acquisition of certain materials and services by the village as required by New York State law. And whereas the Village of Ossining has advertised for materials, supplies, and services through the biannual bid process and has incorporated in the bid requirements for signed purchase orders for certain work as well as maximum work to be undertaken by contractors and maximum project expenditures without pre-approval of the village manager or board of trustees, consistent with New York state laws and the Village of Ossing's procurement policy. And whereas the Village of Ossing advertised for bids consistent with New York state law and received responses to such advertisements. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossing hereby awards the bids for materials, supplies, and services in accordance with the attached recommendations from the Department of Public Works, which recommendations are circled, and be it further resolved that the aforementioned award for materials, supplies, and services is effective May 1st, 2017 through April 30th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll just say this is the second time, I believe, that we're entering into a biannual bid award, and it saves a lot of time. It's a whole, we only have to half as often go out and do all of these bids, and it's a lot of administrative work, which is very important. We are going with a lot of new awardees who have came up with a better opportunity for us to save money and provide great service. So it's a valuable process, and it's great that we can do it half as often and still get the good work and prices through this process. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex discrimination and religious persecution of any kind threatens public safety and the peaceful foundations of a civilized society. And whereas President Trump recently signed an executive order regarding immigration that raises questions on the coordination between federal authorities and local police departments. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossing has been asked to consider the adoption of a statement reaffirming its policies and practices as an open and welcoming community, and one which decries and denounces acts of anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, bigotry, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex discrimination, xenophobia, religious persecution, and hatred, and opposes federal policy which tend to fuel such acts. And whereas federal law does not require local enforcement or other local service providers to inquire into an individual's immigration status, and whereas checking on the immigration status of residents is not a local responsibility and is only carried out in compliance with state and federal law, and whereas the mere fact of being present in the United States without authorization does not constitute a crime, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossing supports efforts being made by the village departments, officers, personnel, and agents, including members of the Ossing Police Department, to ensure public safety through relationships built on trust and goodwill, especially with individuals who are vulnerable to exploitation and abuse due to their citizenship, immigration status, race, ethnicity, national origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, victims of domestic violence, familial status, or religion. And whereas all Village of Ossing departments, officers, personnel, and agents have a legal, practical, and moral responsibility when carrying out official duties to uphold the United States and New York State constitutions, including the principles of federalism and separations of power. Now therefore be resolved, 1, the Village of Ossing decries and denounces acts of anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, xenophobia, Islamophobia, hatred, and divisiveness, including those based on a victim's gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and will continue to work in concert with community leaders, school officials, and law enforcement agencies to apprehend individuals responsible for any crimes of this nature. 2, the Village of Ossing is committed to upholding and protecting the civil and human rights of all individuals regardless of their race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. 3, the Village of Ossing is committed to protecting the life, safety, and security of all individuals regardless of their race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. 4, the policy of the Village of Ossing departments, officers, personnel, and agents is not to inquire about or collect from individuals, including but not limited to a crime victim, a witness, or a person who calls or approaches the police seeking assistance, information concerning citizenship or immigration status, except where there is an investigation of potential illegal activity. 5. Where an investigation of potential illegal activity results in the disclosure of a person's citizenship or immigration status, that information will neither be used nor disclosed in any manner that violates local, state, or federal law. 6. In carrying out such work, the Village of Ossining departments, including the Ossining Police Department, recognize the essential need to respond to victims reporting crimes or injuries and to encourage residents to summon help when needed. 7. The Village of Ossining will coordinate with other public safety agencies, including federal law enforcement authorities, to apprehend any individual, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, or immigration status, for which probable cause exists that such individual threatens the safety of our community. And number 8, the Village of Ossining will disseminate and publicize this resolution throughout the village, including translating this resolution to Spanish and providing it to the Hispanic community. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
On the board, would anybody like to comment on this before we vote? Yes, sir, go right ahead.
So this was started with a resolution that I had presented from Tompkins County, which is a New York State county, upstate. It was pretty voluminous and very, very specific. In fact, it even referenced, you know, some of the granular details of stuff. But the essence of it is that we want our community to be safe. We want everybody in our community to feel that they can come to law enforcement. And if they're in fear, if something's happened to them, it's just, this is so important so that all the citizens are safe. Everybody, the divisive nature of recent executive order, it creates a very difficult situation for local law enforcement, and it's really shameful. But this is the thing that I really wanted to do. I've known for all the years that I've lived here that anybody can come to our police department and talk about their situation, and if they need help or they need to be protected or something bad unfortunately has happened to them. And so for me, it was very important that we talk about this being a reaffirmation of the things that we've done for so long. So I am proud to vote in favor of this evening. I'm thankful to all the coordination and the interaction that we've had with Kevin, the police chief, and our legal counsel to craft something that I think is a very powerful statement, and I'm proud to support it this evening.
Anyone else like to comment?
Yes, I'm not going to repeat what John said, but I'm going to echo that, and I do want to thank our police department, pretty much that I'm proud to say that all this stuff that we have been doing for years is not changing. Something that I'm very proud to say that they're one of the best departments that we have here, maybe in Westchester, maybe the country, I think. A lot of unique stuff that a lot of unique stuff that our police department has been doing to engage our community is incredible. So I want to thank you for all that stuff, and all, not just to you, but the whole department itself. So thank you for that. And again, I definitely support this resolution 100%. So thank you. Thank you, John.
I would just add one more thing that from a communications perspective, the video idea is great. I think that's very important so that everybody can hear it said, hear it spoken in a foreign language. It could certainly be Spanish. It could be other languages as well. I also really I almost want to post this like a declaration. I feel as though it should be in English and Spanish and other languages. We should post it in every place in the village. Every business, every institution should have this posted on here, because this is what America's about. And everybody needs to know about this. Thank you.
I'll echo my colleagues' sentiments of thank you, Police Department and Stewart, for the work that you've done in this resolution. I'll pin my comments in saying that I'm also looking forward to the work that you'll be doing in the future as far as truly explaining to the community, your role in that we play with ICE, or what we don't do. I think that's is continually important, and I think that's gonna be important in the future. I don't think it just stops here at this resolution. And I think we both agree that it's gonna be other efforts, so that people could understand the role, or what the role of local law enforcement versus the role of ICE. So I do support this resolution, but I do think that the conversation does need to continue. Thank you.
See, now, I wasn't going to say much, actually, but having heard some of those statements, I just want to be clear about a couple of things, because I think it would be naive. I mean, you happen to be an audience that came here with a purpose, but there's another audience that listens to this, and they've been writing us email, and they talk to us in a different way, and it's pretty negative. And so I don't want to walk out of here. I mean, I usually, having studied sales, would walk away at the applause and not continue. But I would be remiss in not encouraging. I hear a bunch of people from St. Anne's. I hear different organizations. The idea of conversation is that you have to have conversation with people that disagree with you as much as you do with people that agree with you. Because all of you agreeing with each other and with us makes me feel great, because I've been sitting here at some meetings where nobody agreed with me, so I feel great about it. But I know that we're still going to get emails, and you won't. But you need to help the community and understand your point of view, not just us, because you have us agreeing with you. So for all of you that belong to churches and other community organizations, you also have an obligation to communicate to people who disagree with you and take a very different stand, because that actually is what a conversation is about. It's about people listening to one another as much as people talking at each other. And so I would encourage all of you to continue this conversation. Personally, my parents are immigrants to this country. They really did do what a lot of people talk about. But to this day, they had accents, very thick accents. He spoke 5 languages. English was not one of them. I spent most of my childhood going to the bank for them, doing a lot of things that a lot of immigrants' children do. And it always bothered me how they were treated, because they also did not have a lot of education, and they had blue-collar jobs. And it really bothered me to no end that they were always treated disrespectfully until people knew them. Until people got to know them, until they owned a business and became more successful. So I'm very sympathetic and empathetic, but I do know that it isn't enough of people who share a view to talk to each other. And so I really would encourage you to talk to the other 25,000 people in this community through your organizations and continue a conversation. I was going to stop when you got the applause, John, but it's not enough to declare. So we're looking for your help, folks.
It's a real pleasure to serve on this board with all of these thoughtful folks, and in this village government with so many incredibly competent and thoughtful people who helped us put this resolution together tonight. Even understanding that not everyone agrees with the sentiments that have been shared in this room tonight. But all of us on this board recognize the importance of over-communicating who we are, who this community is, and how we conduct ourselves with the community. The dedication of our police department to community policing is exactly what we're talking about tonight. And whether the message resonates with some folks because we are passing a resolution that states it, black and white, tonight in English, going forward in at least one other language. If that's the way that you are going to hear this message, great, then it's important that we did this. It's not the only way that we're communicating this message. It's also, Chief Sylvester, I don't think you've said no to an invitation to go and meet with any group. And the questions that you got tonight, it's not the first time you've gotten those questions, and it's not going to be the last time you get those questions. And that's another example of our police department's dedication to listening to the community, connecting with the community, and providing accurate, thorough information so that everybody knows that the police department is here to protect us all. This is this question of whether or not local law enforcement is an arm of federal immigration agencies is one that we had to address, because there's been so much misinformation and so much fear that comes out of it for our community. But this is not just to put aside the fears or reassure the folks who are feeling fearful right now. This is a public safety issue for all of us, because if someone is a victim of a crime or a witness of a crime and they are afraid to come to the police department, then that makes it a lot more difficult for our police department to be able to protect us all. And that is in no small part a motivation for this resolution tonight. And so I thank our Corporation Counsel and our police chief for making sure that everything that is in here is an accurate reflection of the policies and procedures that are in place and have always been in place. And I thank this board for working together to put forward this resolution so that we can unequivocally state who we are and make sure that everybody knows it. This is the way you're going to hear it. Here it is for you in black and white. We hope that you come to Kickball with a Cop, Coffee with a Cop. I know I will be at some of those events this summer. You've got a really great lineup of opportunities for us to connect with you and the other officers in a much more informal setting. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any continuing business of the board?
No.
Do we have any new business of the board?
No.
That brings us to visitor recognition. Is there anyone who has come to address the board? If you have, would you kindly state your name, your residential address?
It's Frank Sylvester, 5 Butler Place, this village. I wasn't able to make the last meeting, but I did see it on TV, and I believe it was Trustee Levin that brought up a question on the resolution of an exemption for volunteer firemen in the village. This year I'm celebrating 50 years as a volunteer with the Ossining Fire Department, so I think I can answer a little bit about the question. The question was, how much is the exemption actually worth? Well, it's $500 exemption off of your assessed evaluation of your property. It's available to every volunteer firefighter who is a homeowner. It must be your primary residence, and it can only be taken on one residence. If you own multiple properties, it has to be taken off the evaluation of your property taxes for your primary residence. It says $500 off the exemption, but in reality, it comes down to about $40 or $50 off your tax bill. So if you're a volunteer firefighting 24/7, 365, it's a little bit of a tax break, but we want to thank you anyway.
I want to thank you for the information, but I think you recall it was that I was proud of a village that does that, because what I didn't know is whether everybody in New York State does it, and they don't. Actually, there are villages and towns that do it. We're one of those villages that do it. But thanks for the clarification on the money. I wish it were more, but you know.
Careful what you wish for.
I know. That's the other side of our job.
Is there anyone else who's come to address the board?
Omar Herrera, 199 Main Street. I just wanted to clarify that the County of Westchester, the clerk's office, has a municipal ID program. The government issued ID cards. I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, $18? Yeah, only $18. They do have kind of like a point system, very similar to the DMV. I do want to stress that they're government issued ID cards, so they are valid, they can be used. If you can call 914-995-2800, I can forward you to the clerk's office and explain how that process works. I know the county is trying to find a way to bring it eventually, have mobile application hours at different communities where people could actually go and apply for a card and get a printout right there. It's very important now more than ever because many people were concerned that they could not go to a school and pick up their children. They could not go to the post office and pick up their package. I mean, the issues were ongoing. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on the resolution. I'm so proud that the board has taken the time to speak to so many groups and institutions and churches to address the fear that's real. I've seen it. I've gotten calls. You guys have too. I do think that I'm very hopeful that going forward we can kind of get more in the weeds as to what happens when ICE does contact us, or what happens if ICE does come to my door and you know, I'm with some, you know, I totally respect and understand that there's policy and procedure, as Chief mentioned, but we need to enable our residents to understand what the procedure is. So it may not be this resolution in writing, and it may start off through events, but at some point breaking it down as to what it actually means step by step. Besides that, thank you so much and have a great night.
Is there anyone else?
Yes?
My name is Karen Miller. I actually live in Briarcliff, 209 Willow Drive. It's been brought to my attention that a puppy store has opened on South Highland Avenue. I was here to petition for a local law in Ossining which prohibits the sale of animals from commercial breeders, which we also know as puppy mills. Pet stores get their dogs from puppy mills. Reputable breeders don't sell to stores. They only sell to people who they know and who they can meet, and who meet the dogs and the families. So by supporting pet stores and puppy stores, we are supporting puppy mills. Now, what does that mean? Puppy mills focus on quantity rather than quality. Their dogs and cats too are overbred. They're left in terrible conditions, overcrowded, diseased. They're bred early and often. Females typically are bred every cycle, regardless of their health. They're in constant confinement from when they're born, so they can no longer reproduce, in which case then they're usually put down. They have little to no exercise and little to no human contact, which then leads to behavioral problems and emotional stress, poor sanitation, food and water, and lack of vet care unless it affects their reproduction. And in light of the recent changes with the USDA, that these commercial breeders are no longer listed on the USDA website, so we can no longer look to see how these mills are doing and if they're being inspected properly. Now this is this is not to say that stores can't sell rescue animals. They would absolutely still be able to sell rescue animals. And, you know, as a community, how can we support neighboring towns like Briarcliff, who has the SPCA, which is responsible for taking in dogs from all over the county, including Ossining. And other towns in the county have adopted these laws and these bans on commercially bred animals, including Mamaroneck, Mount Pleasant, Harrison, Yorktown, and Port Chester. And Peekskill is actually in the process as well. So I'm, you know, here to ask for that sort of thing to be considered here in Ossining.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Corporation Counsel Kahan, would you speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Things with regard to what the speaker said. First, with regard to the specific location on South Highland, I've spoken with the folks in the building department. The location itself is zoned what's called Animal Services General, which means it can sell pet supplies, pet food. It can provide cleaning services for animals, but no overnight boarding and no sales of pets. It may be more a language issue than anything, because the understanding from the building department, explicitly speaking to the owner, was that no pets were being sold at that location. We understand that there were some individuals who may have gotten different information. We have sent people over there from the building department to determine that. On the occasions they have gone there, the store has been closed, so we have not gotten access, but they have seen no pets in the store whatsoever. I can say that if in fact it is determined that pets are being sold at that location, the location will be closed, because it is in violation of both the zoning code as well as with regard to the Department of Health requirements for the County of Westchester. On the issue with regard to puppy mill legislation, I'm aware of the legislation that is passed in many of the localities around here. It is something that I'm reviewing, and I will certainly at an upcoming work session discuss it with the members of the board. But again, with regard to this specific location, the applicant made it clear to the building department that no animals would be sold, which is consistent with the zone in which the store is located. Again, if it is determined that there are animals being sold, there will be a violation and the store will be closed.
Thank you for that update. And as I indicated to Corporation Counsel Kahan, and we've had just very, very preliminary conversations, that if there's a recommendation that we consider this form of legislation to avoid future instances, that we're going to be learning more about some of the existing legislation and what might be appropriate here in Ossining.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Goldstein, 23 Meadowbrook Drive in Ossining. And I apologize because I was a little late arriving at the meeting, so if this was discussed earlier, I will just listen at another time to the answer. But I'm concerned about paragraph 4 of the resolution, and just am looking for a bit of insight and interpretation as to what the accept means, where it says that basically you're saying, as I understand it, you don't look for information about citizenship or immigration status or anything like that, except where there is an investigation of potential illegal activity. And I'm not sure what that means, and I just would like to understand it. I don't know whether to look to Corporation Counsel or to the chief, but if you can help me with that, I would appreciate it.
So one of the things that I had urged the board to do was, I hate to use the same phrases over and over again, but in police work, we just have to stay away from things like always and never. There's an exception written into just about everything we ever do because situations do come up. Generally, what that reflects is that, as we were saying before about when people are arrested, the indication of a criminal investigation is things like when someone's arrested, a lot of your information is submitted to an NCIC database, and that's where warrants would come back to us. So we're not necessarily, what that doesn't indicate that there's some effort to seek out people who have some issue with immigration. It's that we will determine people's warrants is what we're really finding. So it may be a little bit unclear as to how that specifically plays out. That's a bit intentional because one of the things I'd ask the board not to do is turn this into a procedural manual. There's a place for that, how to handle each individual thing, and I don't believe this ever was intended to answer every single question. So some of that's where we seek to have forums and be able to speak to people about things, and some of it's just going to be left up to that exceptions do exist. I can tell you that inquiring as to where somebody came from, how long they've been here, and what their intentions of staying have been useful to us in some serious investigations, including a recent homicide. So there are, albeit rare, some serious situations where things like that are useful to an investigation for a particular purpose.
But if I understand correctly, it's more that in the course of an investigation, if some of this comes to your attention,
correct,
from another third-party source, whether it be warrants that are out there or whatever,
sure.
That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about you're doing a criminal investigation and therefore you start
and by the way, where do you come from?
Yeah.
No, our only immigration check, and I hate when people do air quotes, our only immigration check is a general check through NCIC for warrants, and when they come back that there's a warrant for somebody, the standard procedure for that is that you then call the wanting agency to confirm, because occasionally things are left in a computer that have already been adjudicated or answered for. So that's how that plays out in most cases.
Thank you. I'm very happy with that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else who's come to address the board? Not seeing anyone, may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for real property and personnel?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We just skipped ahead, right? Not a lot of comments on that one. So next week, we hope that you will join us for our work session. We'll be back at the 16 Croton Avenue Village Hall. This meeting is adjourned for executive session. Good evening.